Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the World Wanderers podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda, and we're your hosts.
Today we're talking about London, what we did there, what we think you should do there, and some information on backpacking Europe in the summer. But first, do you want to talk about why we went to London?
Sure, yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So I'd actually been to London before. I went to London in 2007 after graduating high school with my family. So London was my first stop in Europe, and I immediately fell in love with the city. So when Ryan and I started planning our trip, I wanted to share my love of London with Ryan. So that was kind of one of the reasons, I think.
Yeah, and I think when you're flying from North America, London's obviously one of the hubs to fly into. So you'd be like London, Amsterdam. What's that big airport in Germany? Hamburg?
No, Frankfurt?
Frankfurt.
Yeah. I think also London is one of those European destinations that as a North American, if you haven't been, you kind of dream about seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, London's like the New York of Europe. Almost.
Yeah. London's like
Paris.
London's like the New York, the San Francisco. It's like all of those cities that we have split in North America are London.
For sure. It's basically a city that you can't miss. And I mean, I've been 3 times now and I love it. So anybody planning a trip to Europe, I would definitely recommend going to London.
Yeah.
Sure.
I remember talking about before we went, one of the reasons we started in the UK was it's English speaking. So we could kind of get comfortable backpacking in an English speaking country and then get more adventurous afterwards with foreign languages. Because what the genesis of our trip was, the first thing we planned, I guess I should say, was running of the bulls in Pamplona in July. So then we had this 2.5, 3 week period that we had to decide where we wanted to go before going there and then continuing on after that.
Yeah. And so we actually crammed quite a bit in. I mean, we spent 2 weeks in the UK, and that's not nearly enough time to do England, Scotland, and Ireland.
No. Well, it's enough time to go there.
Oh, yeah. It's enough time to go there.
But not really like get into the guts of the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, for sure.
But we had to decide if we wanted to go UK, do that, go down to Spain to get to the running of bulls. It wasn't like we were going to come back to the UK afterwards, because there's still, one of the great things about traveling Europe is that there's so much to see so close to you. So it's, even we were there just over 3 months and we felt like way too rushed.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much to see in Europe. You could go back again and again and never see it all. And that's same with London. So we had 4 days in London. So in a city of a little over 8 million people, I mean, there's a lot to see and do in London.
Yeah, you definitely have to pick and choose what you're going to do, because you can't expect to see everything in 4 days.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we did and then probably highlight, I think, our top things that we did and what we would recommend you to do if you only had a few days in London.
Yeah. So do you want to start talking about what we did?
Sure. So we arrived in London after coming from Iceland pretty late in the evening, and then we were heading to Wimbledon the next day. So we were still fairly jet lagged. So I think we called it a night pretty early because we were getting up at 5 a.m. to head out to Wimbledon.
Yeah. I remember reading through my journal, there's been a couple times already where I was like, wow, I had so much more energy as a 21-year-old. I don't remember if we talked about this in the last episode, but we got in at night and then wake up at 5 a.m. and go to Wimbledon the next day.
Oh yeah. 22-year-old me had way more energy than 25-year-old me has.
Yeah. I've aged a lot more than 4 years, apparently.
Yeah.
So one of the great things that Wimbledon does is that a lot of sporting events, they sell their tickets, and then if the tickets are too cheap, you can buy them on secondary markets, websites like StubHub, but it's really expensive. But Wimbledon has found a way to kind of keep tickets, you get tickets into the hands of people who really want to go to the events by doing a big queue for a lot of the tickets. They do a lottery for some tickets and then a queue. So if you go early enough, if you want tickets bad enough, you can go get tickets. So we showed up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And do you remember what our place in line was?
I think we were like 1,500 and
1,500,
something.
yeah, 1,500,
So we were
1,600.
in a massive line. Like it roped through a giant field.
Yeah, and that was the very first day of Wimbledon. So I guess being there on the first day has its advantages because there's so many matches going on. So there's a lot more stuff to see. But obviously the matches don't have the same level of consequence. So I'm imagining people would line up a lot later on in the event to get tickets to the later rounds of the tournament.
Yeah, for sure. It was fairly organized though. That's one thing that I remember. I mean, you hate lines and you were completely calm the entire time. And it was very well
they
organized.
do a good job because you show up, I think immediately after we showed up, they give you a ticket with your number in it, with it. So you're not really concerned about, you still have to hold your spot in line, but one person can go do something, come back. And it's not like you have to worry about people beside you budging you and stuff because you have your ticket number, you have your place in line.
Yeah.
On a piece of paper, I think.
And they sold food and drink and stuff. So, I mean, you can keep yourself fairly satisfied the entire time. Because I think we waited for 5 hours before we got in?
Yeah, we left. No, I think we left at 5 from the hostel. Got there a bit before 6. Because I remember at 6 we were sitting around. And then,
So waited for about 4 hours then. Because I think we got in about 10:30.
Yeah, and I think around 9, things start to happen because you're 1,500 people back in the line. So the line is moving forever before you actually get into the stadium. I remember feeling like we were in because they let you out of what is this big grass field into the grounds. And then the line just went on for ages past that, which was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I remember that too. It was cool once we got in though. I'm not a huge tennis fan by any means. I mean, I'm not very good at tennis, maybe something to improve on over the next few years. But I don't really follow. I mean, I know the Williams sisters, but that's about it for me.
Yeah. I'm a bit more of I was a pretty general sports fan, but not particularly interested in tennis other than the major tournaments. And I think I was pretty excited to go to Wimbledon though, because first time traveling out of the country and it's I'm getting to go to this really cool event that I've seen on TV a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was pretty cool. So who did we see? We watched Milos Raonic.
Yeah, so the first match we watched was Milos Raonic. He's a Canadian. And then this was kind of the year where he kind of broke out. So he was on a really small court with, I think there was 3 rows of seating or something. And it was kind of funny because we got there and we were starving. So we went and got fish and chips, and then we come in and everyone around us is it's Wimbledon, so it's a fairly classy environment, and we're munching down fish and chips in this very small area, 2 rows away from the people playing tennis.
Yeah, it's pretty cool though. And then who else did we see?
So yeah, we had gotten there early enough that there's a certain number of queue tickets, just open grounds, and then there's queue tickets for center court, queue tickets for court 1, queue tickets for court 2. So center court, court 1, and court 2, I believe, all have set seating. So if you're early enough in the queue, you can get one of those. So we ended up getting court 2 tickets. So then we went and watched Venus Williams and Gael Monfils after. The problem was when you wake up at 5.
Being jet lagged
at 5. I mean, this is 5 days after we left Canada, 4. So we were still jet lagged from that first flight to Iceland. And then the next flight. So by 1 in the afternoon, we were falling asleep. And I remember being at Venus Williams and you'd start to fall asleep. And then she's obviously renowned for her noisiness.
Her grunting.
Yeah, during the tennis match.
She's a powerhouse. She is strong girl.
Yeah. So that was fun.
Yeah, but every time she would grunt, we'd kind of bob our heads awake.
Yeah, wake up. I think we ended up leaving at
3, I think.
Yeah, which was but there's still tons of stuff, tons of matches going on, but
we were falling asleep.
Yeah,
though.
then they weren't something strong enough energy beverages.
No. So while we were in London, we stayed at the Astor Hyde Park Hostel, which once again I found on hostelworld.com. We just chose based on prices and ratings. I mean, the Canadian dollar isn't great compared to the pound. So we were quite conscious about the prices when booking. But it's a great hostel, great location right beside a beautiful green space, Hyde Park. And we happen to be near a Whole Foods.
Yeah, that was the first time we'd ever ran into a Whole Foods. And it was Kensington in London, the Kensington Whole Foods.
Maybe.
Which was amazing.
What was amazing about it?
Well, so especially for travelers, like grocery stores are good because you can get some cheaper food, but you can go to Whole Foods and they bought so many pre-made dishes and you get everything. Sushi, Asian foods, Indian foods, everything.
Yeah, I think we ate there probably like 5 times.
Yeah, I don't know about 5, but yeah, we ate there a lot.
Quite a few times in 4 days.
Yeah, but the Astor Hyde Park Hostel right by Hyde Park was pretty cool. It's like a cool old building, just like big dorm rooms, pretty standard dorm rooms in that way. Nothing too
fancy.
Yeah, but I would definitely stay there again because you're right by Hyde Park, which is an amazing place to be staying.
And you're right by, I think we're in between 2 tube stations.
Yeah, within 5 minutes walking.
Yeah,
less.
for sure. And with London, I mean, it's so big that you really do need to take the tube. Once you get off at a good tube station, you can walk a lot of the central stuff, but the tube is key.
Yeah, and it's I don't know, it's probably one of the best metro systems that we've encountered traveling. And just in terms of the amount of stations, you can find a station fairly easily and then get around where you need to go. And we had bought Oyster cards beforehand through a travel agent, so
everything was organized. I mean, we hopped
had
off.
money. So at the airport, we hopped on the tube, took it to right by our hostel.
Yeah, definitely. I think the cheapest way and easiest way to get around in London for sure is the tube.
Yeah, we didn't take a taxi. I don't even know, but I imagine how they'd be expensive.
Oh, for sure. Especially, I mean, if you're from Canada or the US
yeah,
and you're dealing with the exchange rate with the pound, especially now.
Yeah. I mean, now with Uber, maybe it's a bit cheaper, but one of the cool things, one of the cool things we did in London was our hostel had an all-you-can-drink night, which seems like a terrible idea for a business to run an all-you-can-drink night, but it was fun.
I think we paid like, 10 or 15 pounds and we got like all you could drink.
But it was punch, right?
Yeah.
So it was like some hard liquor punch.
I think it was strong though. I have photos of people dancing on tables.
Yeah.
We ended up with a British couple from Bath, just outside of London, who were in town for a concert, and then an Australian couple. So, I mean, the 6 of us were up till, 3 a.m.
Yeah, something like that.
On like a Tuesday, we tried to go to a bar, but it was a Tuesday, so there was basically nothing open. We ended up at some weird place. It's kind of like our second adventure in hanging out with new people.
Yeah, it was another strange group. The British couple was younger than us, maybe just under 20, and then a bit of an older Australian couple.
Yeah, and the British couple was, I think he was a tattoo artist and she was a hairdresser. So, I mean, we spent a lot of time with people who were university educated, not just...
Yeah, and so they weren't traveling, right? They were just there for a concert in London.
Yeah, and I think that they just were very different than us. But it was cool. I mean, we had a great time. It was a good night.
Yeah.
I think on this part of the trip too, we started to become a little bit more after being in our first hostel. But I think the second night at Astor Hyde Park, we were becoming more comfortable with being around strangers, meeting new people, interacting with people who were kind of outside of our, what we were used to from back home.
Yeah, it was. Right? In Iceland, we stayed in a fairly small dorm room. It was a fairly small hostel. Astor Hyde Park's a bigger hostel. Bigger. We stayed in a 12-person dorm room or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty big.
So you get more of those interactions with people. And that was something that I'm a pretty socially awkward person. I have a lot of social anxiety. So that was a good step for me where I'm talking to all these people all the time, just practicing my social skills.
Yeah, always working on the social skills.
Yeah, so then after that, we went out and saw the sights.
Yeah, so My favorite site in London from the first time I went was Big Ben. I have no idea why I'm so obsessed with the clock tower, but I just think it's like Big Ben and the Parliament buildings is so beautiful. Like when I meet somebody from London, they're like, oh yeah, I work right downtown. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just gushing over it. So I was really excited for Ryan to see that area. So while we were around there, right by Big Ben and the Parliament buildings is the London Eye, which is a big Ferris wheel type thing, I guess.
think most people have seen the London Eye.
Okay. Well, for people who haven't seen the London Eye, it's kind of a giant
It looks like a
Ferris
circle
wheel.
with a bunch of jelly beans attached to it.
Okay, yeah. But it's pretty expensive, so we actually didn't go on it. I've been the other 2 times that I went to London, though.
Yeah. It was funny looking back because we've just been in South America for 6 months and kind of gotten used to that price range of things. And then we were looking back through our journals, and I think we saw that St. Paul's?
No, we paid £13 to
Yeah.
get into Westminster Abbey
Then-
with student cards.
Yeah,
and we
13
paid
pounds.
it.
Oh my God. I remember
That's like-
in South America, we were like $13 US for like a car. Like, no.
Like, no, we won't pay that.
It's
but
like
13
nothing plus
pounds is
13.
what, like $20 Canadian? For a church?
Something about that. Yeah, it's craziness.
I mean, in saying that, Westminster Abbey is pretty amazing to see.
Yeah.
And we were there just after the royal wedding. And so, I mean, they got married there, so it was pretty cool to go there and see that.
Yeah, and it's cool walking around and seeing because there's a lot of famous dead people inside.
Yeah,
Buried
also,
there.
if you're a Dan Brown fan, you can kind of do the whole
Oh yeah, right. Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons.
Yeah. I mean, if I went back, I probably wouldn't go into any of them, but
I think it's worth a visit of the
Yeah.
things that you do.
yeah, it's weird when you travel because you kind of come to realize like every town, when they're selling their tourist attractions, it's like number 1, cathedral, number 2, like Parliament building, if there is one. You know, it's the same stuff over and over and over and over again, and you kind of get burnt out.
Completely. And I was listening to a different travel podcast yesterday. It was about a guy who's actually gone to every country in the world. And he was saying, like, you know, when you've traveled so much, you kind of stop appreciating the things. And I think that that's definitely something that we hit in Europe.
Yeah.
Had we done London last on our Europe trip, I don't think that we would have paid to go into Westminster Abbey because it's just like, oh, another cathedral.
It's funny too, now that we've been, I remember there, you see all these like dudes on horses, like fountains, stuff like that you think might be kind of unique to England, but all like you think of England, the English Empire, French Empire, like Spanish Empire, you think of them being kind of different and distinct, and they are distinct in some ways, but they're very similar. When you look at, you know, the styles of architecture,
Statues
of men on horses, like that's everywhere all the time.
Yeah, every like Central Plaza, Central Square.
Yeah. And I remember being there and kind of being like, because I am not religious at all, I was kind of, I don't know, I felt a little bit uncomfortable going to all these churches.
Yeah, and sometimes we would go and there'd be people praying. And
Yeah.
there'd be like a sermon in session, and it's kind of like, oh, can I take a photo? Is this wrong? Is this weird? Like, I don't really know. It is a little bit. It's definitely kind of an awkward thing.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, other stuff involved in the building of those churches that, you know, makes it kind of weird to think of them as something that people gawk over.
Yeah, definitely. So while we were in London, we also saw, obviously, we went and saw Buckingham Palace. That's definitely a must-see in London. We walked through Trafalgar Square, Piccadilly Circus. I think we actually had a sighting of the Queen while in Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah, I don't know. Was it Piccadilly Circus?
I think it was right before we got into Piccadilly Circus.
You were standing there, and then there was a big roundabout, and all of a sudden, like, all the cars in the roundabout were, like, black SUVs or something.
Was there sirens?
There was police motorbikes, and then we're like, oh, what's going on? And then eventually a cargo drives past us, and, like, the back seat, like, the Queen sitting there, and we're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It was a pretty surreal thing.
Yeah, it's like, is this seriously the Queen? Like, she's on our $20 bill. She's on our loonie.
Yeah, it was very weird.
It's pretty cool, though. So that was one day that we spent exploring. And in between that, we stopped to obviously try some of the English delicacies. So fish and chips, we had some beer. What else did we try?
Yeah, I think we got like a little pot pie, some sausage. There was like an English platter. It was like, I think it was like bangers and mash.
Oh, yeah.
Some beans.
And what are your thoughts on English food?
Well, I love fish and chips, but I was pretty stoked on that English platter.
Yeah, so for me, I love English breakfast. So traditional English breakfast is fried eggs with toast and beans.
And sausage.
And sausage and fried tomato. That's like one of my favorites. I love that. It's such a good treat if I can have an English breakfast. But as somebody with a gluten intolerance, England's a really hard place for me to eat. And I'm thankful that I'm not celiac, because I can pick sort of around.
Well, I guess
food,
traditional English food is hard for you to eat.
Traditional English food, yes.
Like, I mean, in a city like London, it's every food.
Oh,
everywhere,
yeah. I mean, it's
all
so
the time.
multicultural. But if you're trying to get traditional English food as somebody with a gluten sensitivity, it's tough.
Yeah. But the one of the things like you were talking about earlier, the prices, when you go into a pub and you'd see that they seem cheap. It's like, oh, you can get a pint for like $3.90 or something. And you're like, oh, this is awesome. And then you like convert it. And it's like, oh, that's not so awesome.
Yeah, you pretty much.
So you kind of get lured in by the numbers.
Yeah.
Because you're still on, or at least we were still on Canadian prices. We hadn't adjusted to the pound.
I think that's probably good. If you adjust to the pound in just a few weeks going there, you're gonna.
No, but I mean, like,
so
so you
much
think
money.
you see the numbers of like $4 and you think that's cheap because you're just converting it in your head, but you don't do conversions that well. But like, if you had been there for a while, you would have kind of come to realize, okay, $4, that's a little bit more expensive. You know?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. I understand what you're saying.
That's one of the cool things about traveling is, always switching up currencies. Europe, not so much because you got the euro in such a wide range of places, but
Asia, South America.
You get used to these exchange rates and then you go, and some of them are just ridiculous because of crazy inflation, but you get used to something and then you change and you're like, oh God, like I have no idea what this is. And I know you start off in a country and you have this vague idea of what the exchange rate is and you kind of operate on that for a couple of days and you're like, maybe I should check. And you're like, oh wow, like things are actually way more expensive than we thought.
Always good when you realize you're spending more money than you thought. But we also visited the London Tower, which is great. I mean,
we went inside, right?
Yeah, we went inside the London Tower. I mean, if you're really interested in antique jewels and artifacts and horse weaponry and that sort of stuff, you could spend a whole day there.
Yeah, so all of the listeners who are into horse weaponry, which I think when I look at what our target audience is, I think it's those people.
We're really gearing in on the people who are interested in horse weaponry.
The segment between horse weaponry and antique jewels. Like that's really our niche.
We should probably talk more about the London Tower then.
Yeah, so we did London Tower, walked by the Globe Theatre.
Which is cool.
London Bridge wasn't falling down when we were there.
It was not. We also walked by St. Paul's Cathedral. I went in it the first time that I was there.
Yeah.
It's pretty spectacular. It is expensive though, so we opted out.
Yeah, I was more than happy to have the pounds for beer instead of St. Paul's Cathedral.
Yeah. St. Paul's Cathedral is cool though, because it has a giant dome on top and you can actually go to the top of an open dome. And if you stand opposite sides from another person and you talk into the wall, you can hear them from the other side.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
It's pretty neat. I don't know, somebody who's more knowledgeable in how sound travels would be able to explain that better, but it's something about the shape of the dome. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. So what were your favorite things in London that we did? Like, I think for me, no, sorry to interrupt. What were your favorite things?
Just getting ahead of yourself over there. I mean, like I said, Big Ben. I think everybody needs to go take the tube to the Westminster stop, see Big Ben, see the Parliament buildings. I mean, I love little things like seeing the red phone booths.
Yeah.
Taking a photo
like
in
cabs.
something like that. Yeah, seeing like the little cabs that you've seen in movies, and Buckingham Palace you have to see, and you have to walk through the gardens there. I think it's just so cool.
It's weird it being... So there's places you go that you have no idea about, and there's places you go which you obviously have quite a bit of idea about. So like London. London's a place where you've seen it on TV and in movies a ton, and you've seen, like, we'd seen Wimbledon on TV. So it's like all these things you had seen and now you go to, which I feel like for me, if you have some prior knowledge, it makes your experience better. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I do. I think, yeah. I mean, so yes, I do think that in the same hand, I do love showing up in a place and talking to other travelers and being like, what's cool here? What have you done? Where have you eaten? What have you seen? What's awesome? What should we do?
Yeah, I guess maybe you'd say that. I'd say for historical stuff, the context is really important, and you don't really get that context if you're just showing up.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But like geographical, like cool natural stuff.
Yeah,
you don't need history to appreciate that. But
yeah, for sure. So what were your top things? Like, what did you enjoy most?
So I think I really liked that area around the Globe Theatre. That was really cool walking around.
What did you like about it?
It's just a really cool area. It's kind of this like...
What was cool about it though?
It's still old. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't know. I felt like I could like put myself in the body of someone who was like in London at like the 1800s.
Like dealing with the plague and like...
It's like, or like, you know, some sort of Sherlock Holmes. There's like a horse carriage coming around the corner. It's like smoggy everywhere. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just like what I picture it being.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's really cool.
And I really liked that day we went because we started right by Westminster. Mm-hmm. No, we started by the Parliament building.
Big Ben was obviously the first stop.
So we started by there and then walked over to Buckingham Palace and Trafalgar Square.
Yep.
We just walked the whole way, and I think that was an amazing day.
Yeah.
I remember when we went to Paris later on, we kind of went like, Paris is a bit more spread out. So you go spot, tube, spot, tube, spot. But like, it's so nice to be able to walk around and kind of just get to absorb the city.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you. I mean, in the same hand, it's nice to be able to take the tube around, and I definitely do love the tube. And I think that's a great thing about London. But I agree. I love that we took the tube from our hostel to Westminster Station, walked by the London Eye, walked by Big Ben, you know, did Westminster Abbey, and then walked to Buckingham Palace and just really got a feel for London.
Yeah. And so we basically did our own walking tour. And one of the great things about traveling in Europe is that there are it's called free walking tours. There's a company called New Europe, which does free walking tours, which aren't actually free walking tours. They're pay whatever you want at the end walking tours.
They're tip based. So I mean,
yeah, but they just use the word free. But so this is kind of the trend all over the world now. But in Europe, New Europe does a very, very good job. So we didn't do one in London, but if you are going anywhere in Europe, make sure you look out for that.
Yeah, and we'll put a link for New Europe walking tours on our show notes from this episode, so you can go check that out.
On our blog.
Yeah, on our blog. We also went to Camden.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to do was like really go out and experience the nightlife there, but we didn't get much of a chance to do, but we went out to Camden one night and checked it out, and that was a really cool area. Yeah,
I had a few drinks. It's definitely, I mean, as 20-somethings, I think if we were to move to London, I feel like Camden's an area where we would hang out with our friends, you know, going for dinners, going to bars, that type of thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, lots of good bars, lots of good dinner.
It looked like there was lots of cool shops too.
Yeah, it definitely is like a very youthful area.
I think there's a few good hostels down in there. Ryan's brother actually backpacked Europe a few months before we did, and he stayed at St. Christopher's, which is a popular chain of hostels.
Gigantic hostels.
Yeah, in Europe. And St. Christopher's has a massive one in Camden that I think is very highly rated on Hostel World.
Yeah, and then New Europe did a pub crawl in Camden too.
Okay.
which I would have liked to go on, but we didn't because we were tired. Because I think we went, stayed out to 3 a.m. one night and got up at 5 a.m. the day before that.
Yeah, no, we were pretty busy. Something else interesting to talk about was backpacking Europe in the summer. I mean, that's definitely, I think, the busiest time of year. And we didn't really realize how busy it would be. We kind of wanted to have very open schedule because we did have things planned.
I think we were a bit naive.
Yeah, I think naive's a good.
Because we showed up in London. I think at that point in time we had a hostel booked in Pamplona, and that was it.
Yeah, we had nothing booked for 2 weeks.
No, we had a Eurorail pass.
Yeah, but in terms of places to stay, we had nothing booked for 2 weeks. And so I think at one point we were like, oh, we should figure out where we're going to stay in our next place, which was Edinburgh, and go on Hostel World, and there's basically nothing available. Mm-hmm. And as it turned out, there was a festival the weekend we were going to be there, and we're like, oh, well, shoot, that sucks. And that was definitely a big learning experience for us.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're willing to stay anywhere in a city, regardless of the rating or, you know, regardless of price, definitely just wing it. But for us, we were pretty budget conscious. We were looking to stay places that were clean. We were looking for good experiences, good locations, and we missed out on that in Edinburgh. And we'll talk about that a little more in our next podcast, but something to be aware of if you are going to backpack Europe in July, August, probably June and September as well.
Yeah. It seems like you have to be 2 to 3 weeks in advance to get the really good places. Yeah.
If a friend recommends a hostel to you and you want to stay there, figure out your dates and book it.
Pay, how much is it for the cancellation on Hostel World?
Oh, you can pay like $1.50 extra, I think it is. And you just get like a flexible booking, which means you can cancel your booking and they just let you rebook with your down payment.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Because there's some pretty awesome hostels that are kind of like worth the trip alone, just the hostel.
Yeah, for
sure. So you can kind of, it's not going to tie you down too much booking 3 weeks for maybe a month in advance on those like specific places. I know a lot of people, when we've been traveling, really like to be open, no plans. I just go wherever the wind's blowing. But in Europe in the summer,
it's tough. Yeah. It's tough. You could do it though if you have, say, 6 months and you're only doing Europe and you're very open to how many countries you go to and you don't have any specific things you want to see and you're like, oh, you know, like I want to stay at this hostel in London, for example, like it's booked for the next 3 weeks, whatever, I'll just stay in Dublin. Mm-hmm. Like I'm fine with that. If you're that open, I mean, yeah, go for it. But if you're, I mean, for us, we had 2 weeks and we had stuff we wanted to see. So it's kind of like, oh, we're going to miss Edinburgh if we don't go this weekend and if we stay in London for 3 more days because we don't have that much time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely something to note. It was busy, which is good and bad. I mean, lots of tourism, but at the same time, it makes hostel environments that much better.
Yeah.
Good for meeting people. Would you agree?
Yeah, I did agree.
You look a little uncertain about that.
No, I like things when they're not that busy. But
yeah, that's true.
I didn't feel like London was that bad relative to some other places we went later on that we'll talk about later on.
Yeah, for sure. So one last thing that I wanted to talk about, I think, before we close it off is I actually went into Wales and England in September with one of my best girlfriends who's going to school over in Cardiff in Wales. And we went to Bath and Stonehenge out in the countryside of England. And being that this was my 3rd time in England, this is the first time I've seen the countryside. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I would definitely recommend is take a bus, take a train, rent a car, whatever you need to do, get into the countryside of the country. Countryside of the country. Good English by me.
Well, how far is Stonehenge from London?
It's not far, like an hour or 2. Everything's close in the UK.
But you think that's a must do?
I mean, it's rocks in a field.
Yeah.
It's cool though. It's cool. I mean, if rocks in a field aren't your thing, probably don't go because that's what it is. Mm-hmm. If they are, get out there. Like it's cool. It's like, how did they get here? One thing to note about Stonehenge. Stonehenge closes. Rocks close. I didn't realize this because it was not on Wiki Travel and it was not on the website where I could see it. It probably was and I just didn't look very well. But yeah, they actually closed Stonehenge at 6 p.m. So my friend and I went to do a sunset picnic. How romantic of us. And Stonehenge was closed. So we only saw it from a distance.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
So no one you had met in Cardiff had told you that?
No one I've ever met has told me that Rock's closed.
So if we were going to London again, back in time, and we're staying like 6 days, would you?
I'd want to get out into the countryside.
Yeah.
I think.
And when you say get out in the countryside, you would say like Bath.
Bath for sure. It's such a cool town. So cool. It's old historical buildings. It's got like the royal courtyard, I think it is.
What's that?
Oh, I can't remember too much about it. We need to get my friend Courtney on here. She knows everything about royalty. She loves that. It was like royal apartments used back in the day, and now they're sold to people, but they've still got a giant courtyard in the front where they used to do like public displays of royal families, I believe. And they've got cool underground bars. We were only there for a day, so we didn't get a chance to go out, but yeah, they've got bars underground. So they keep like the old historical buildings, and then they build these massive clubs underground because you actually can't tear down the old buildings there. They have government rules against it. So it still looks like what you would imagine 18th century England to look
cool.
like. Yeah, cobblestone streets. It's really cool. So I would definitely recommend taking a trip out to there, exploring outside of the big city.
Yeah. And what did you do in London when you went back?
So we stayed at another hostel that was really good. It was called YHA Downtown London, I think. And it was really good. I would also recommend that one, which we also found on Hostel World. I obviously made Courtney go and see Big Ben because I had to share my love of Big Ben with her as well. We did the London Eye. We paid to do the Fast Pass, which is not... It's definitely the way to do it, I think, as opposed to spending, 4 hours in line. Just pay a little bit of extra money and save yourself some time. It's expensive, though. I don't think it's feasible for long-term backpackers. I mean, depending on your budget, but it's expensive. It's cool, though.
Yeah.
And then went out for dinner, went and saw Buckingham Palace at night, which was cool.
Is that better than during the day?
No, it's not better. It's just different. I mean, I'd seen Buckingham Palace twice already, so it's kind of like, okay, let's see it different. It has like pretty lights and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. And then what else did we do? Yeah, just walked through pretty much the stuff you and I walked through. We didn't pay to go into anything just because we didn't have the time. We were only there for like 2 days.
Yeah. So what would you say is like the perfect amount of time to be in London? If we weren't in a rush, what would you wanted of us to done?
Great English,
Losing
right?
my speaking ability. What do you think? Like 6 days?
I think a week. Yeah. I think a week if you've never been to London and you want to kind of take it slow, because 4 days was jam packed for us.
And so when you're backpacking, it's nice to kind of have, I've found it nice to have, you have a bit of time each day to kind of chill out, to read. You need to plan. I like to write in my journal. And then, have time available to just hang out with the people you meet.
Yeah.
You don't want to be there, go, 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 go.
And that's definitely how you and I were. I mean, we had pretty much every moment jam-packed, I think.
Yeah, I think if you're on a 2-week vacation, get out and see as much as you can. But if you're just going to be traveling for a long time,
give yourself some more time.
Yeah, you need to have those times to relax.
And I think, too, our listeners will kind of see how we pretty much jam-packed 3 months in Europe. And I think if we were to do that over again, we would probably cut out some places, would you say? And spend
definitely
more time, like really slow down the pace. It's just,
so much to see.
There's so much to see. And I mean, when you're going fast, you're seeing a lot of stuff, but are you taking it all in? Are you really getting a feel for the culture? Are you getting a feel for the city?
We talked about a bit before too. A lot of the stuff is similar.
Yeah, definitely. yeah, I think the more you travel, the more it becomes about your experiences and really getting into the culture as opposed to just what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we learned as we were traveling. Getting into Europe was kind of like, oh my gosh, we got to see all the stuff. We got to do it all.
Yeah.
That's me.
I mean,
Not
it's
you.
like Europe was so much more. There's like so much more like you have to do this, like, because it's more renowned, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if you were to compare, for example, the things to do, top things to do in London, there's probably just as many top things to do in London as there is for the whole country of Colombia. In terms of like must-sees or must-dos, would you say?
Well, I think top seats are weird. So it's like if you went to London and then you come home, people are going to be asking you about like, oh, did you see this, 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 and this? Because, you know, everyone's been there.
Yeah.
So that's what creates those things.
For sure. Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know, do you feel like we've tied a bow on London?
Yeah, I think I'm done talking about London.
So next time we're going to be talking about Edinburgh and Glasgow.
Yeah, so our time
A bit
is
of a Scottish adventure.
Scottish adventures.
Scottish.
Ryan has some Scottish heritage, so he likes to think he can speak in a Scottish accent. He'll practice before we record next.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll have some photos and some links up on our blog, theworldwanderers.com.
Yeah, and if you want to read a little bit about, get ahead and read about our trip in South America, you can visit my personal website at amandakingsmith.com. That's all for now.
Okay. Adios.
Ciao.